Seashells. Pretty, dainty seashells. They've always seemed pretty durable, rough, sustainable to me. Yet, climate change is causing the ocean to acidify, and as a side effect, its crustaceans are literally disintegrating.
Imagine that. Our ocean becoming an even hotter pool of acid, bleaching the coral and disintegrating anything with the shell.
The oceans are not only affected by pollution that ends up in the water. What is around our seas has a huge impact too.
Like, a factory doesn't have to be built underwater to affect it, and carbon doesn't have to rise up from the seafloor to hurt sea life. Like, carbon emissions are quite literally dissolving seashells and crustaceans. Like, here, I went to Florida years back when I was little to visit my grandpa, because he lives there, and while we were there, we had visited Myrtle Beach for fun, and although there was something wrong. While I was running through the sand gleefully, bound towards the water, I had stepped on something. It was rough, jagged, and it hurt. So I looked down and see what it was, and I barely recognized it. It was a seashell. But the one problem is that it wasn't much of a seashell anymore. It was all deformed, it looked brittle, bleached. Like if I had stepped on it any harder, it would have busted and gone into my foot. Thank God it didn't. Carbon isn't just making the atmosphere hotter, it is melting anything with a shell away too. I mean, not exactly melting. Here's how it works. Carbon dioxide is absorbed into the water and mixes with the H2O, making carbonic acid. This carbonic acid splits into bicarbonate and hydrogen ions. Those hydrogen ions, they decrease the pH level of the ocean and make it so shells can't grow properly. And when that happens, they're not fully developed, they look deformed, jagged, they're weak, and then there are the ones that actually are dissolving, made of calcium carbonate.
And this carbon isn't just magically appearing, it's everywhere. In cars, factories, and your own breath. We can't just destroy all cars. We can't just stop the production of anything with plastic in it. And we can't just stop breathing. But we can try to help clean our environment by using bikes, walking, getting an electric car if you can afford one, and we can also dispose of waste cleaner instead of burning it. We need to stop turning the ocean acidic, because soon it won't even be an ocean anymore, just the largest acid vat ever.
And I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound very nice. And if it sounds unpleasant to us, think about the crabs and the critters. So if you don't want these creatures to disintegrate, or if you just really happen to like seashells, we should work on this.
When we think of oceans, we tend to think of one big body of water. I mean, it is what it is. Semi-logistically. Although oceans are actually made up of distinct environments. Coral reefs are some of the most important ecosystems on our planet. Unfortunately, due to climate change, 90% of the corals in our oceans have become bleached. I went to visit my grandmother in the Dominican Republic this summer, and I was lucky enough and got to do a little snorkeling. I couldn't help but to notice that every time we went snorkeling, most of the coral was bleached. It was still marvelous and covered with algae and little colorful schools of fish swimming around it, but I couldn't help to wonder what it looked like before most of it was gone. Last summer was pretty hot. It didn't matter where you were, what you were doing, you felt it. And going to the ocean felt like you were taking a bath. It wasn't as refreshing as it had been the year before. And it really made me think that we have to put everything towards saving our planet. Because we have the ability to, and so many species are simply suffering because of our actions, and now our lack of action.
And this coral that she talked about earlier is home to some of the most diverse species in the world. Here, these are two photos of the Great Barrier Reef. You can see one side, the healthy, happy side, filled to the brim with color and teeming with life. And the other side, the bleached, decaying, depressing side, empty, devoid of any color or life. But if we don't change, sooner or later, that was what the entire reef will look like. It won't be that safe, colorful haven you see on the right, nothing but a mere ghost town.
Healthy coral is in a happy relationship with an algae called zooxanthellae. This algae lives in the coral's internal tissue. Zooxanthellae is the coral's main source of food, which supplies its nutrients and also its color. It is also key to the coral's success. Like most of us, coral doesn't just disappear at the snap of a finger. No, it dies slowly. Coral that is in an unhealthy state is appropriately named stressed coral. The coral and the algae are fighting due to increased water temperatures and pollution and aren't getting along. The algae starts leaving the coral, and you can see this happening by loss of color in the coral.
The coral no longer has its main food source and is now in its bleached phase. You can see this by a white bone-like version of the original coral. Although not all coral that is in the stress phase ends up bleached, but most of it does, unfortunately. When a coral dies, it doesn't. Or when a coral bleaches, it doesn't die. They can survive a bleaching event, but they are under more stress and are subject to mortality.
Coral can go from being happy and healthy to being bleached within months. As you can see on the image behind me, the coral was living its best life in December of 2014. By February of 2015, it was starting to feel a little stressed, and only by August of 2015, it was already gone. But this is a story of optimism. The zooxanthellae can come back to the coral. It can go back from being bleached. We can heal some of the wounds that we have created on the earth. Coral is just one part of what we need to save, but everyone has to start somewhere, right? One unusual thing about coral bleaching is how it's recorded. Scientists can't go out and count literally every single coral, and they can't just, so they don't track it as how many species die each year, but rather in a coral bleaching event. A coral bleaching event is when a lot of coral dies within a short period of time. As you can see on the graph behind me, you can see how an increase in coral bleaching events is connected to an increase in water temperatures globally.
Pay attention to that word globally. Climate change is evidently affecting everything. Let's move up to the Arctic Circle. This is what an iceberg may have looked like about 50 years ago. And this may be that same iceberg now. Temperatures are rising in the air as well as in our seas. Studies show that the average ocean surface temperature has increased almost half a degree Celsius, meaning roughly 30 degrees in Fahrenheit. Note that this is still just within the past 50 years, so think about how the world may be by the time my generation has had grandchildren. If that's too depressing, let's linger on something else. Where did this supposed ice cap go? Well, think of it this way. Have you ever found yourself with a cup of ice? Presumably, the answer is yes. You may have noticed that as the ice melted, water began collecting in its place. Almost everybody is aware of the fact that ice is just frozen water, so this is to be expected.
So now we're going to take a theoretical glass of ice water and name it iceberg. Now, you may have noticed in the time that Missy has been talking, just picture another theoretical glass of water. We're going to title this glass Ocean. Now, we're going to take the water that the ice has released from iceberg cup and pour it into ocean cup. Now, just imagine that the water level has increased. Increased. If the water level didn't increase, then there was something wrong with your experiment. Though it may seem like this has absolutely zero impact on us living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where, let's be honest, we never have enough of any type of moisture, it will affect us eventually.
So this takes us back to where we started. What happens to the melting ice caps? Well, they become the ocean, eventually leading to sea level rise.
Sea levels have already risen 21 to 24 centimeters since 1880. In the past 100 years, temperatures have risen 1 degree Celsius. The two largest reasons that the ocean levels are rising is because large bodies of ice, like glaciers, are melting because of the extra heat in the air. The second reason is, due to the extra heat, the sea is expanding. Coastal cities may flood as soon as 2050. If we don't do something soon, eventually every place on Earth will flood.
Marine animals are also being affected by this. Take, for example, sea turtles. Turtle eggs, which are laid on beaches, are being washed away, taken by the tide, slammed around by currents, shattering prematurely, so they die before they even get the chance to live. Now, the silver lining of this is that there are volunteer workers and staff of the beach helping to relocate them to make sure that doesn't happen. But enough of that, switching the subject from dying turtle eggs to rising sea levels. Although slowly rising, they might affect more than just coastal cities. even places high up in the mountains, such as Santa Fe. So, and like, in only 10 years, it might be too late to reverse this, and once that happens, it's over. Alright, so we have given you enough reasons to care, but we wanted to see something actually happen from this. Like, imagine if you could only tell your grandchildren about these creatures, such as, instead of showing them the real thing. Like, I've seen it before, you'd be missing out, but at the rate that we're killing them all off, it might be reality. Like, in just 26 years, 2050, 95% of all coral will be gone, dead. So we gotta change, or else.
If we do change, just think about the possible coral revival after it's been bleached. By doing better, we can actually make it better. But in order to do that, we have to rethink our lifestyle and overall approach to the world around us.
Unfortunately, taking a step like getting a climate vehicle is not possible for everyone. But if you can make an effort by reusing containers, donating instead of discarding, or not using as much water for baths and showers, you could still greatly slow climate change.
If you want to make an even more direct impact, another thing you could do is donate to charities like these. These are the top 10 charities that are currently helping our oceans today. They do different things, from trying to breed more of an endangered species to just removing plastic from our oceans.
And
It's It's important to understand that we are not fully responsible for climate change. I mean, humans have been destroying the planet for centuries, we know this. But we are responsible to save it.
And although the things that we just said might seem small right now, in the long run, it is the small things that make the biggest difference. So next time you're shopping, think about where whatever you're buying is from, and think about the companies that you shop from.
Remember that you don't have to drop everything you're doing to save the planet, because we understand that, yes, this isn't possible for everybody.
All we're asking for is for all of you to be more aware of climate change.
Just do what you can. Everything makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.